When the clock hit midnight, the meal turned murderous. Welcome to Clue Law. I'm your host, Vale. Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in. I love seeing this community gather from everywhere. Into the case we go. If there's one sound in that house on West 35th Street that can make me feel a twinge of uneasiness in my kneecaps, it's the front doorbell between 11 and 1. Not because it's ominous, not because I'm jumpy, but because I've watched Nero Wolfe for enough years to know that the period before lunch is for two things only: orchids and appetite. Anything else is a trespass, and trespassers often wind up in my notebook. It was Tuesday, and New York was doing its November trick of looking clean and crisp while quietly plotting pneumonia. Fritz was in the kitchen making something that smelled like a diplomat's dream. Wolfe was upstairs luxuriating among his plants, and I was in the office with my feet on the desk and a newspaper laid out in a respectful sprawl. The headline I was pretending to read involved a scandal somewhere in Albany, but the important part was the fact that I was pretending. I heard Wolfe's step on the stair. People who haven't met him think of him as a monument that somehow learned to talk, and they're not far off. But monuments don't creak, and Wolfe does. That day he came down carefully, a big man descending like a continent, making a decision about gravity, and I knew before he opened his mouth that something had pushed him off schedule. "Archie," he said from the hall door. Not loud. He doesn't have to be loud. His voice fills space the way a cello fills a room even if you're in the kitchen. "Yeah? Come." He didn't say, "Please." He never does when he's already made up his mind. I tucked the paper aside, wiped a non-existent crumb from my tie, and went to the hall. He was standing there in his yellow silk pajamas, looking as formal as a bishop because, on Wolfe, even pajamas look like a uniform. One hand was on the banister, the other holding a small card. "Who's ringing the sacred bell?" I asked. He handed me the card. It was plain white. No crest, no fancy embossing, no attempt to persuade anyone. The name on it was simply Celia Rourke Culinary Institute, Midtown Below. That, in a precise hand, were 3 words. "It is urgent." I looked up. A cook, a teacher, a cookbook assassin? The bell was rung. Wolfe said, "That is the fact. Therefore someone is at the door. Therefore you will open it." "Yes, sir." I went to the door. When you work for Wolfe, you learn to conserve breath on arguments you won't win. I opened it. She was standing on the top step as if she'd been placed there by a decorator who enjoyed contrasts. Mid-30s, maybe late. Tall in a way that had learned not to apologize for taking up space. Coat cut sharp as a paper knife. Hair the color of coffee that's been done right, and eyes that didn't. Asked permission before they looked at things. She was holding a leather folder tight against her chest, not clutching it like melodrama, just keeping it close the way you keep keys close if you've already had them stolen once. When I didn't say anything for half a second, she did what people do when they're used to rooms listening to them. "Mr. Goodwin." "That's me," I said. "You're Miss Rourke. Come in before the weather decides to start lying." She stepped past me without being urged twice. There was a whiff of cold air with her, and another smell that I only recognized because Fritz has ruined me for ordinary food. Sage, maybe. Or thyme. Something honest. Up close, you could see the tiredness carefully managed under the intelligent face. Not the tiredness of a late night. The tiredness of a week that didn't go the way it was supposed to. I led her into the office. Wolfe waited in the doorway, not entering as if he were the host refusing to sit at a guest's table until the guest stated a purpose. He gives you the chair, you give him the reason. She looked at him and didn't blink. That already set her above average. "Mr. Wolfe," she said. Her voice was low and even, but the kind of even that's covering a burn. Wolfe inclined his head a fraction. "Miss Rourke, you consult a detective." "I do." "Sit." She sat. I perched on the arm of the red leather chair across from Wolfe's while he took his own throne behind the desk. There's a rhythm to these things, and I was already rocking my heel to it. Wolfe looked at her. Not up and down. Wolfe doesn't appraise people the way a tailor does. He looks as if he's fitting your words already, seeing where they snag. You are connected with the Rourke Culinary Institute. I founded it. Yes, I recall an article, 2 years ago. Progressive training, emphasis on classical technique, a conspicuous list of donors. Congratulations. Thank you. She didn't take the bait of flattery. Good. And now you are here, Wolfe said, during the interval preceding my luncheon. Therefore you come with a matter you believe merits that discourtesy. State it. She opened the folder. Her hands were steady and her nails were short, which told me more than I needed to know about her profession. She slid out a single sheet, held it a moment, and then set it on Wolfe's desk like a card laid down in a game where the stakes were bad. I'm being blackmailed, she said. Wolfe didn't move. By whom? I don't know. Not with certainty. Then you are not being blackmailed. You are being threatened. I'm being blackmailed, she said again, and this time there was a thin ridge of something behind it. They already have something of mine. I will decide the noun after the facts, Wolfe said. He indicated the paper with an eye movement. What is this? A menu. I leaned forward. On the sheet, in a neat typeface, was a list of dishes with prices. Not a diner menu. Not even a bistro menu. This was high-end, theater ticket, linen tablecloth stuff. And the title at top read, The Hunt Room, Private Dinner, November 11th. That date jumped at me because it was a week ago. Wolfe let his eyes travel down it. I knew that look. It's the same expression he gets when he reads a particularly convincing confession. Calm, but already moving pieces in his head. Continue, he said. Last Monday, she began, there was a private dinner at the Hunt Room. 8 people. No press, no cameras, the kind of dinner people pay for and never want to explain. And you were present. I designed the menu, I cooked. My instructors and top students served. She swallowed once, quick. It was meant to be a showcase for the Institute, a fundraiser. Fundraisers, Wolfe murmured, are frequently the mother of inconvenience. She ignored it. After the dinner, my sous chef, Lila Trent, stayed behind to supervise cleanup. She locked the kitchen. The next morning, she came in early and found the pantry door open and 2 items missing. Food? I asked. No. She glanced at me. A spice jar and a notebook. Not even a good notebook, just a stitched thing I keep recipes in. A thief with an appetite for paper, I said. Charming. It wasn't a simple theft. She opened the folder again and pulled out an envelope. This was slid under my office door the next day. She handed it to me. Wolfe doesn't touch new objects if there's no reason to, and I'm the official toucher. I opened it. Inside was a photocopied page from a notebook. The top said, Rourke Personal, in her handwriting. The recipe underneath was a classic. Coq au vin, with some personal notes about reducing the sauce and using smoked bacon instead of lardons. Nothing scandalous there. But at the bottom, in a different pen, was a line that made the air go suddenly tight. If he insists on being there, I will give him something he cannot digest. I looked up. Well, that's cozy. It's part of a private journal I keep in the same notebook, she said. Thoughts, notes, frustrations. I shouldn't have written it. But I did. And now someone has a page from it, along with the spice jar from the dinner. Wolfe's eyelids lowered a fraction. What spice jar? She hesitated. That's always the pivot, right there. The line between embarrassment and danger. She crossed it cleanly. Black cardamom, she said. In a jar I never use publicly, because that jar wasn't for flavor. It was for a demonstration. Of what? Wolfe asked. Of how small quantities of certain things can do harm. Now her eyes had gone sharper. Not wider, sharper, like she'd decided to stop hiding behind euphemisms. I teach technique, Mr. Wolfe. Classical technique. But I also teach the ethics of feeding people. That night, as a part of the dinner, I spoke privately to the donors and guests about expanding curriculum, about teaching our students to detect adulteration, contamination, sabotage. The industry is not as clean as you think. We live in a world where a jealous line cook can wreck a chef's reputation with one pinch of the wrong powder. A pinch, Wolfe said softly. Yes. I didn't like the direction this was taking. The smell of sage and thyme in the hallway suddenly felt like a mask over something sour. So you gave a lecture, I said. You showed a jar, you wrote a moody line, and now someone is playing bogeyman. Where's the blackmail part? She looked at me the way a teacher looks at a smart student who's being thick on purpose. Because yesterday I received a message. If I don't resign from the Institute by Friday noon, they will go public with the page you just read and claim that I planned to poison someone at that dinner. Resign from your own institute, I said. I founded it, but it operates under a board. I'm the face, yes, but I can be removed. If donors panic, they will remove me. Have they asked for money? Wolfe said. No, not yet. Then it is not blackmail. He waved a hand a millimeter. But it is coercion. Continue. Who attended this dinner? She started listing names. And because the moment had that air of stepping into deeper water, I reached for my notebook. First, she said, was Dr. Mercer Fallows, pharmaceutical executive. He chaired the event. I wrote it down. Second, his wife, Gwen Fallows. Third, Leah Vance, food critic, influential, the kind people fear. I made a face. Wolfe saw it. He doesn't care about critics, but he respects their nuisance. Fourth, Harold Quillen, investor, one of our board members. That got Wolfe's attention the way a bell gets a dog's. The board connection mattered. Fifth, Evan Shearer, celebrity chef, loud, famous. He pretended he was there for charity, but he was there to be seen. She said the word pretended like it had a hook in it. Sixth, Marisol Kite, another board member. She funds scholarships. She dislikes me. She said that without complaint, just fact. People who say that kind of thing plainly have thought it through. Seventh, a man named Victor Slane, lobbyist, friend of the Fallowses. Eighth? Wolfe asked. She swallowed again, slower this time. My brother, Julian Rourke. Ah, there it was, the personal stake. I didn't look at Wolfe, but I felt the shift in him, like a chess player watching a new piece hit the board. Your brother is involved with your institute? No, he was invited by Dr. Fallows. They're connected financially. She caught herself. He's had trouble, gambling, debts. I was trying to keep him close, that's all. Wolfe regarded her. You do not strike me as a woman who would allow sentiment to endanger her work. I've never let it, she said, until now. And the note demanding your resignation came from where? An encrypted email, anonymous address, but it included a photograph. She produced her phone and tapped, then handed it to me. I turned the screen toward Wolfe. The photo showed her notebook open on the stainless counter, the copied recipe page visible, and next to it, like evidence laid ceremoniously, the black cardamom jar. The background was unmistakable. The hunt room kitchen. Their logo was on a towel in the corner, meaning the person had access to that kitchen, I said, or to anything that had been there, she replied. Trays, bins, uniforms, our staff, their staff, anyone. Wolfe leaned back. When he leans back, it's never relaxation. It's posture for thinking. You come to me because you believe this coercion is intended to destroy you professionally. Destruction, however, is expensive. What is the aim? I don't know, she said quietly. Maybe someone wants the Institute. Maybe someone wants to prevent our expansion. Maybe someone wants me punished. I have no shortage of people who would enjoy that. Punished for what? Her mouth tightened. For refusing to compromise our standards, for rejecting certain donors, for not being pliable, for being, I suppose, what men describe as difficult. Wolfe's eyes were bland. Difficultness in a woman is often merely integrity in a man. You see why I came? I see the outline, Wolfe said. Not the figure. Tell me of the notebook. Who knew its contents? Only me. It stays in my desk. It should have been in my bag that night, but I left it in the kitchen office while I handled the plating. And the spice jar? The jar was in my personal kit. I brought it to show Dr. Fallows as a point, an example of how a toxin can look like a spice. I never said what it was intended to illustrate. But you did intend to illustrate something. Yes. A substance? Potentially dangerous in quantity, she said. And there was a flicker of impatience. But that's not the point. I never fed anyone anything harmful. The jar never went near food. But now it appears beside your notebook, implying intent. Exactly. Wolfe was silent for a count of 3. He does that on purpose. People fill silence with truth. She didn't. She just sat there with her hands folded on her lap as if she were waiting for a verdict. Finally, he said, Miss Rourke, have you gone to the police? No. If I do, the board will hear about it within an hour and I'll be out before the weekend. Pragmatic. I don't want a scandal. I want the person stopped. Quietly, if possible. You wish me to discover who is coercing you and by what means, and to terminate the attempt before Friday at noon. Yes. Wolfe lowered his chin. You're a competent woman. I presume you have considered who among the 8 might profit by your removal. I have. They all might in different ways. Name those ways? She exhaled, and I knew we were getting to the part that stirs mud off the bottom. Dr. Fallows wants the Institute to accept a corporate partnership I've refused. Leah Vance has been angry with me since I barred her from touring our kitchens for a profile. Evan Shearer wants to slap his name on our school and thinks I'm an obstacle. Harold Quillen votes whatever way the largest donors push him. Marisol Kite has wanted me replaced with her own candidate for 2 years. Victor Slane has interests I don't fully understand. And Julian... She stopped. Your brother, Wolfe said. He needs money. If I'm removed, it may open a negotiation I've blocked. He's desperate, but he wouldn't do this. Not like this. Desperation frequently attempts elegance, Wolfe said. Not always successfully. She didn't take offense, which again put her in the higher bracket. Wolfe looked toward the clock. He had exactly 40 minutes until noon. I could almost hear his stomach consult the schedule. Archie. Yeah. You will undertake preliminary inquiries at once. Right now, I was just about to undertake preliminary inquiries at once, he repeated. And there it was, the invisible gavel. He looked back at her. Miss Rourke, I will accept this matter provisionally. Her shoulders dropped a millimeter. Relief, but still guarded. But, Wolfe added, there is a condition. Name it. You will remain accessible. You will not resign. You will not attempt private action. If I require a meeting with any of these persons, it will occur on my terms. Agreed. And the fee will be double my usual rate. She blinked once this time. Double. Yes, the dinner you described suggests wealth and vanity. I have no appetite for vanity unless it compensates me. She didn't even hesitate. Fine. I'll pay whatever you ask if you keep this from destroying the Institute. Very well. Wolfe turned a sliver toward me. Archie, begin with the hunt room. Got it. I stood up. Any special instructions besides living a pure life and writing neat notes? Be precise, Wolfe said, and do not allow your curiosity to provoke you into tasting anything questionable. Now he tells me, I said, and got only a minimal narrowing of eye for my trouble. I escorted her to the hall, said I'd be in touch, and watched her go down the steps into the cold. When I came back, Wolfe was already settled in his chair like a king who had just allowed himself to be petitioned. He said, "Archie." "Yeah?" "Do not be misled by the absence of a corpse." I paused. "You think we're heading for one?" "I think someone has chosen a culinary metaphor for violence. It is rarely done without intention." I had my coat in my hand, and my notebook in my pocket, and that itchy feeling in my kneecaps was back. "Okay," I said. "I'll go sniff the hunt room." "And Archie." "Yeah?" He waited just long enough to be annoying. "Bring me the truth before you bring me their perfumes." I grinned, because if I didn't, I'd have growled. "You got it." I went out the door and into the city, while behind me the brownstone held its breath and Wolfe's lunch cooled by the minute. And somewhere in Midtown, in a kitchen that had seen too many sharp knives used for soft men, someone had decided that a spice jar and a sentence could pass for a weapon. I had a hunch they'd regret involving Nero Wolfe's house in their recipe. The hunt room was 3 blocks from the kind of hotels where a doorman can tell you your net worth by your shoe shine. The place sat in a glassy corner with a brass plaque and a vestibule that smelled faintly of truffles and money. I checked my hat in the mirror, gave my tie a tug to remind it who was boss, and walked in wearing the expression that says, "I belong anywhere I feel like belonging." At the host stand, a young woman with a headset and an enthusiasm deficit looked up. I gave her my card. "Archie Goodwin. I'm here to see whoever is in charge of your kitchen." She read the card, eyes flicking over it like she was turning a page in a cookbook she didn't want to learn. "Do you have a reservation, Mr. Goodwin?" "Not for lunch. For trouble." That got me a medium blink. She picked up the phone, murmured into it, and a minute later a man in a white jacket came out from the corridor. Not a chef's jacket. This was custom, with his name embroidered in teal and an arrogance pressed into the seams. Late 40s, built like he'd moved crates before he moved soufflés, eyes sharp enough to separate egg whites at 10 paces. "I'm Kestrel," he said. "Executive chef. What's this about?" "Private dinner last Monday," I said. 8 guests, Rourke Culinary Institute. I need to ask about a couple of items that went missing. His face didn't change, but the air did. Anyone who's worked in kitchens as long as he had learns to keep his expressions in a locked drawer. "Missing?" "From here." "From your pantry office, apparently. A spice jar and a notebook. You'll understand why it matters if I say the word police, but trust me, I'd rather not." He held my gaze for a second, doing the silent math of inconvenience. "Come back. We'll talk in the office." We walked through the dining room. The lunch crowd was civil, preoccupied with being seen eating something small and expensive. Through swinging doors, we hit the kitchen, which was a different universe. Heat, steel, voices calling times like a battlefield where the only casualties were sauces. Kestrel moved through it with the authority of a man who can ruin your week by tasting your stock. He opened a side door and brought me into a narrow office, lined with prep schedules and a framed review, from a magazine that probably feared him. He shut the door. "All right. Who are you working for?" "Nero Wolfe, on behalf of Celia Rourke." That registered. He didn't like it, but he knew the name. You don't run a place like this and not know who owns a school that might produce your future staff. "She said she lost a notebook here," he asked. Her sous chef did. "Lila Trent. She stayed late." "Yeah, I remember. Trouble with one of my guys about storage. Nothing ugly. The kitchen was locked at midnight. My night porter checks every room. Your notebook wasn't here when we opened at 6. Who has keys to your pantry office besides your porter?" He leaned back, eyes on a point over my shoulder as if the answer was written there. "Me. My sous. The events manager has one for inventory. And maintenance. 2 men. Names? Gus Monteros. Corey Bale." I wrote them down. "Any of them outside the kitchen after midnight?" "Corey had a ladder in the hallway at 1. Gus was gone by 12. The events manager, Mara, was at home. My Sue was on the line until we closed. That's it. And the staff from Rourke's Institute? They had their own people. They were in and out of our kitchen all night. Polite kids, good hands. Lila knew what she was doing. Anyone look curious about the pantry or that office? He hesitated a fraction too long. I filed it. Look, he said. Private dinners are a zoo without cages. Guests wander. Investors go looking for a story they can retell. That food critic, Vance, kept poking around. Said she wanted to see the space. I told her no. She smiled at me like I was a side dish. She slipped into the pantry corridor once. My pastry cook shooed her out. Leah Vance in the pantry corridor, I repeated. Good to know. There was also Shearer, Kestrel added. And now I knew why he'd hesitated. He liked naming names about as much as I like paying my own lunch bill. Big television chef. He came back twice, once to compliment a dish, loudly, and once because he wanted to take pictures. We don't allow pictures, he argued. He's not subtle. Was he near the pantry? Not that I saw, but he thinks rules are seasoning. What about the guests' coats or bags? Any of them stored in the back? Everything was in the cloakroom up front. No one from the party had business here unless they made it. I nodded. Did you see Celia bring in a personal kit? Maybe a small case? Yes, a black roll bag. She put it in the pantry office while she spoke to Dr. Fallows in the corridor. I remember because I asked her to keep personal gear off my counters. And who was around when she put it in there? Her brother showed up right then, he said. Late. He looked nervous. He and Fallows talked in low voices by the ice machine. Celia saw him, didn't look pleased. She went back inside. So Julian Rourke had walked into the kitchen and into the orbit of Celia's kit at the exact moment it was unsecured. That didn't put a gold star on him yet, but it did put a pin. I asked a couple more questions. Routine stuff about door logs, security cameras, yes. Whether anyone else had complained about missing items, no. Kestrel promised to have his events manager pull footage for me. The promise sounded forced. I didn't press. Sometimes you let people stew in their own reluctance until it slides into cooperation. When I stepped back into the kitchen, the heat hit my face, and so did a thought Wolfe would approve of. Whoever stole that notebook knew it existed. A restaurant pantry is full of things worth lifting if you're a thief hungry for resale. Truffles, liquor, knives that cost more than my rent. A stitched notebook and a single jar. That's selection, not opportunity. I left the hunt room with my notebook heavier and my lunch prospects dimmer. On the sidewalk, I paused long enough to call the brownstone. Wolfe answered on the second ring, which meant he'd been waiting for it. Kestrel says the kitchen was locked at midnight. Keys limited. 2 outsiders poked in the back. Leah Vance and Evan Shearer. Also, Celia's brother arrived late and was near her kit when she stashed it. Wolfe made a sound that could have meant anything from continue to you disappoint me, but I've learned to interpret with caution. Bring me the names of the maintenance men, he said, and the footage if you can. Working on it. Next stop is Rourke's Institute. Proceed, Wolfe said, and hung up with the crispness of a man closing a file he expects to reopen. I started toward Midtown again, thinking about a spice jar that wasn't supposed to be used, a notebook that wasn't supposed to be seen, and a room full of people who'd paid to dine like kings. Someone had walked away from that kitchen with a story they wanted to cook Celia alive in. And if they thought they'd set the table nicely, they hadn't met Nero Wolfe. The Rourke Culinary Institute took up 3 renovated floors above a former garment warehouse, which meant it had high ceilings, big windows, and that faint smell of ambition that never entirely comes out of brick. The lobby was open and bright and full of young people in chef whites, moving fast with clipboards and knives rolled up like bedrolls for battle. If you want to know where the future is going to be hungry, you come to a place like this. A receptionist spotted me coming in and straightened as if she'd been trained by an army that served béarnaise. I gave her my card, said I was here to see Lila Trent, and watched the word Wolfe do a small jump behind her eyes. The Institute already knew about the threat. Maybe not the board, but gossip in kitchens spreads faster than fire. She called up, asked me to wait. While I waited, I took inventory of the room. A donor wall on the right, names in bronze, half of them expensive sounding, 2 of them the kind you'd see on a hospital wing. One of those was Quillen, the board member Celia had mentioned. Another was Kite. So Marisol Kite didn't just fund scholarships, she had a chunk of ego invested in that marble. A couple of students passed, carrying a tray of sugar sculptures. One of them glanced at me, smiled politely, then lowered his voice as they walked on. I didn't hear the words, but I heard the tone. A little tight, a little pleased. Not good. Lila Trent came down to get me herself. Mid-20s, wiry, the kind of person who can stand 12 hours and still not sit straight because sitting is a luxury she hasn't learned to trust. Her face was plain until she smiled, and then you realized plain was just her resting setting. She didn't smile now. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, "Ms. Rourke told me you might come. This way." We went up a service elevator that smelled strongly of bread cooling and through a corridor with glass walls looking into teaching kitchens. In one room, an instructor was holding up a fish to a semicircle of students like a priest with a relic. In another, someone was swearing in French, which makes it sound almost educational. Lila led me into a small office off Celia's suite. Celia wasn't there. The chair behind the desk was empty, and seeing an empty chair in a room like that felt wrong, like a missing tooth. We sat. Lila folded her hands and waited. I like people who wait. It saves me the trouble of prying. "Start at the beginning," I said. "After the dinner." She nodded. We finished at just after 11. Ms. Rourke was exhausted. She left with the students and said she'd take her kit in the morning. I stayed to help hunt room staff clean down. We put everything away. I locked the pantry office and the kitchen doors. We left at midnight. No one came back in after you locked up. Not that I saw. The hunt room porter was in the hall sweeping. Their chef, Kestrel, was doing final checks. He watched me lock the pantry office. She spread her hands slightly. "That's why I keep telling myself I'm not crazy. I know I locked it." "You're not crazy," I said. "Who besides you knew Celia kept a notebook in that office?" "Only me. She writes ideas in it all the time. She calls it her back brain." A flicker crossed her mouth. "She doesn't let anyone read it." "And the jar, the black cardamom." Lila's eyes dropped. "I didn't even know about that until the next morning. The kit was open. 2 items missing. I told her right away." "Was the kit open because you opened it?" "No, I never touch her kit unless she asks. It was open like someone had been in a hurry. Things pushed aside." Her voice tightened. "Someone was looking for something specific." I nodded. Same thought I'd had on the sidewalk. "During the dinner, did anyone see her bring that kit in?" "Chef Kestrel did. He made a little comment about personal gear. She put it in the pantry office because she didn't want it underfoot." "Who was nearby when she put it there?" Lila didn't hesitate. "Dr. Fallows and Mr. Slane were talking to her in the corridor. Ms. Vance was hovering, trying to get photos of the plating. And then Julian walked in." "Julian Rourke?" "Yes. He was late and looked rattled. He asked me where Celia was, but before I could answer, she saw him. They argued quietly near the back prep table." Lila shook her head. "Not a screaming match, just sharp words. She told him to leave the kitchen. He didn't want to." "Did he go into the pantry office?" "No, at least not while I was watching. But I was watching a lot of things. Guests kept wandering, like Leah Vance." Lila gave a humorless laugh. "Oh yes, she came in twice. She said she was just curious. She wasn't. She was hunting. She tried to open the pantry door once. I stopped her. Anyone else? Evan Shearer. He strutted back there like he owned the stove. Celia tolerated him for 5 minutes. After that, she said if he came behind the line again, she'd have him escorted out. That sounded like Celia. It also sounded like a man who doesn't like being talked to that way might enjoy handing her a professional guillotine. I asked Lila about the Institute. Recent tensions, board meetings, donors pressuring Celia. I didn't want to, but Wolfe would want the temperature of every room. She leaned forward. There's been trouble. Quillen and Kite have been pushing her to sign a partnership with Fallows Company. Celia said no. She thinks their funding comes with strings that would cut students' hands. Kite hates being told no, and Shearer, he's been sniffing around the board like a dog around a roast. He wants a flagship school with his name on it. Does he have support? Some donors like celebrity. Lila's jaw set. Celia doesn't. She says cooking isn't a circus act. Any staff here who dislike Celia enough to play games? Not staff. Students, maybe. She's hard on them, but they worship her. Mostly. Mostly? I repeated. She looked at me. There was one exception. A student named Noel Bryce, kicked out last month for stealing exams. His mother is on the board's social committee. Celia wouldn't budge. Bryce, I said, writing it down. Another pin. When we were done, Lila walked me back toward the elevator. We passed a glass classroom where Celia was visible through the wall, standing at a prep table with half a dozen students gathered tight around her. She was demonstrating something with a knife, hands sure, voice controlled. But even from 10 feet away, you could see the strain in the set of her shoulders, like she was holding herself straight by willpower, alone. She didn't look up. She didn't see me. And for the first time since I'd taken the case, I felt the threat in my gut the way Wolfe had warned me. No corpse, but plenty of room for one if this got cooked too hot. Outside on the street, I hailed a cab and pulled out my phone. Time to report. But before I could dial, the phone buzzed in my hand. Unknown number. No caller ID. I answered because I'm me. Goodwin. A man's voice, smooth and cheerfully impersonal. Mr. Goodwin, you're working for Celia Rourke. Who's asking? Someone who suggests you stop. You're in a kitchen you don't understand. Step away from the stove. Then the line went dead. I stared at the phone for a second, listening to my own breathing in the city's traffic. The call wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just confident, which meant whoever was behind it knew where I was and didn't mind letting me know they knew. I dialed the brownstone. Wolfe picked up like he'd been holding the receiver. Archie, he said. You'll love this, I told him. I just got warned off. Silence for a beat. Then, come home. At once. That was all. And if Nero Wolfe tells you to come home at once, you don't waste time asking whether lunch is involved. You go, because the sanctity of that brownstone had just been tapped on the shoulder by a stranger's hand. I got to the brownstone in 15 minutes flat, which in midtown traffic either means skill or luck. I'm not proud enough to pick which. I paid the cab, climbed the stoop, and went in with the feeling that the house itself was listening. Fritz met me in the hall. He didn't say anything. Fritz never announces anxiety. He just radiates it like a well-mannered kettle. He took my coat, and his eyes asked a question he wouldn't. Where is he? I asked. In the office, Fritz said softly. And Mr. Panzer is there. That stopped me. Saul Panzer doesn't appear at the brownstone on a Tuesday unless Wolfe has decided the board is set and the pieces are ready to be moved. I went in. Wolfe was behind the desk, of course, in his chair, napkin tucked into his collar because lunch had happened or was trying to happen. Saul sat in the yellow chair with his hat in his hands, calm and neat as a tax return. On the side table, between them like a third party to the conversation, was a small glass jar. It didn't take a detective to know which jar. black cardamom, or at least something dark and wrinkled that could pass for it. The lid was off. The jar was empty. I walked to it slowly, because even empty jars can bite. Where'd that come from? Saul's eyes flicked to Wolfe. Wolfe nodded once, so Saul spoke. Delivered 10 minutes ago, in a brown paper bag, left on the front step. I was coming in when the boy, delivery kid, rang and ran. No name, no bill. Any note? Saul slipped a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to me. I opened it. Only 4 words. Typed, no signature. For your inspection, Wolfe. I looked up at the big man. They're getting friendly. They are. Positioning, Wolfe said. His voice was dry as toast. You were telephoned. Yeah, unknown number, smooth voice. Suggested I step away from the stove. They know your movements, Wolfe said. Therefore, they are either close to us, or they have enlisted someone close to your client. You returned promptly. That was correct. Any clue from the jar? He gestured. Smell it. I did and immediately wished I hadn't. It smelled like smoke and earth and a little sweetness, which is what cardamom is supposed to smell like if it hasn't spent time around anything sinful. Nothing sharp, nothing chemical. Well, I said, if there's poison in there, it's the poetic kind. Wolfe ignored that. Saul has visited the hunt room. Saul nodded. Kestrel cooperated after some reluctance. Security footage from the corridor outside the pantry office shows 3 relevant entries after Miss Rourke stored her kit. First, Miss Vance at 9:34 p.m., alone. Stopped by the pantry door, tested the handle, then left when a student came through. She did not enter. Second, Mr. Shearer at 10:02 p.m. He tried the door, found it locked, shrugged, walked away. Third, at 10:47 p.m., Miss Rourke's brother entered the corridor with Dr. Fellows. Fellows left after a minute. The brother remained. He used a key. I felt my eyebrows go up. He used a key. Saul's voice stayed level. Yes, he was in the office for approximately 2 minutes. He came out carrying a roll bag. I turned to Wolfe. Julian had a key to the pantry office. Apparently, Wolfe said. It is unlikely he carried it habitually. Therefore, he acquired it that evening. Fallows, I said. Kestrel. Fallows is plausible, Wolfe replied. He chaired the event and had access to staff. Kestrel is less plausible. He has no motive to assist in coercing Miss Rourke. Unless he's being paid to, I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed a hair. Paid by whom? We're not speculating yet. Proceed with the facts. Julian entered the pantry office. He removed the kit. Yet when Lila Trent discovered it missing in the morning, it had been returned, minus the jar and notebook. Do you see the inconsistency? Yeah, I said. He stole everything, then brought most of it back. Either he got cold feet, or someone took what they wanted and handed the rest to him to return. Or he was instructed to remove the kit for a brief interval so another could search it privately, Wolfe said. Saul added, Kestrel says he didn't give Julian a key. He says only Fallows requested access to the corridor earlier in the evening to take a call in private. He was accompanied by Victor Slane. I whistled softly. Fallows and Slane went back there together. Then Julian uses a key later. That's a nice little relay race. Wolfe steepled his fingers. It is. And now the jar appears on my step, emptied as if to say, you're too late, or you are, invited to interpret. What if it's a bluff? I asked. They send an empty jar to make it look like they disposed of something worse. Possible, Wolfe said, but less elegant than the original coercion. The sender is confident, perhaps even amused. That is dangerous. Saul leaned forward a fraction. Also, I checked Julian Rourke's background. Gambling debts, yes. But his creditors are ordinary. Nothing that suggests the kind of coordination we're seeing. And he has no history of subtlety. Wolfe nodded. He is a tool, not a craftsman. We must identify who is using him. I paced once because sitting felt like surrender. Candidates. Fallows wants the partnership. Kite wants control. Quillen votes with donors. Shearer wants branding. Vance wants a story. Slane wants whatever lobbyists want besides your soul. Wolfe's mouth twitched. Almost a smile, but he'd deny it under oath. You omit one. Who? Miss Rourke herself. I stopped. Come on. Not as culprit, Wolfe said. As catalyst. Consider what she refuses. She refuses partnership with Fallows. She refuses publicity with Vance. She refuses celebrity with Shearer. She refuses pliancy with Kite and Quillen. There is a common feature. Her resignation clears a path for all of them, I said slowly. Not for all, Wolfe corrected. For one in particular. Because the coercion is timed. Friday at noon. That is not arbitrary. I waited. That is the hour of the board's emergency session, Wolfe said. I stared at him. You already know about a board session? Miss Trent mentioned a special meeting to Saul when he pressed her. She did not know the purpose. Then whoever's pushing this wants her out right before the vote, I said. Exactly, Wolfe said. The coercion is not to punish her. It is to remove her as an obstacle to a decision already prepared. Saul stood. You want me to bring someone in? Yes, Wolfe said without looking at him. Bring Dr. Mercer Fallows to me, politely if possible, firmly if required, and notify Mr. Quillen that I will see him this evening. Saul nodded once, put on his hat, and was gone. I looked at Wolfe. You're summoning suspects already, without even leaving your chair. It's like Christmas. Do not be flippant, Wolfe said. We have been invited into this kitchen. I intend to decide who has burned the sauce. He glanced at the door, toward the dining room where Fritz would be clearing lunch. Then back at me. Archie, telephone Miss Rourke. Tell her to come here at 4, with her brother. Both of them? Yes. And if Julian bolts? Wolfe's voice was flat. Then he bolts. We will net him later. I went for the phone, but halfway there I looked back at the jar on the table. Empty, innocent smelling, and somehow more threatening than if it had been full. Somebody out there had decided to put their finger in Wolfe's soup. By 4 o'clock, we were going to make them taste it. By 7 o'clock, Wolfe's office had that air it gets when the furniture knows it's about to earn its keep. Fritz had cleared dinner away early at Wolfe's direction, which always makes the room feel like it's holding its breath. Wolfe sat behind the desk, a large, immovable fact of nature in a well-cut suit, hands steepled, eyes half-lidded the way a cat's are before it decides whether the mouse is interesting. I was at my side table, notebook open, pen ready, trying not to look too pleased with myself for surviving the day. The bell rang at 7 on the dot. I opened the door to Leah Vance. She wore a gray coat with a collar that could have doubled as armor, and a smile that had bought and sold more reputations than most people have opinions. She came in without asking permission, because critics rarely do, and she took the yellow chair like it had been reserved for her ego. Mr. Wolfe, she said, voice sweet as a dessert that hides a razor. I'm told you were eager to see me. I was, Wolfe said, and I'm gratified that you chose to come rather than explain your kitchen trespass to Inspector Kramer. Her smile stayed on, but it turned colder. I don't know what you mean. You wandered where you were forbidden during Dr. Fallows's private dinner, Wolfe said. You tested the pantry handle at 9:34 p.m. The hunt room has cameras. I have the footage. Well, she said lightly, curiosity is not a crime. Not unless it is paid for, Wolfe replied. Tell me, Miss Vance, who offered you a story about Celia Rourke intending to poison a guest? Her eyes flickered. It was the smallest movement, the sort that tells you truth is present, even if it's hiding behind lipstick. No one offered me anything, she said. I received an anonymous message yesterday, a page from a notebook, a photograph of a spice jar. It concerned public safety. I considered it newsworthy. You considered it lucrative, I said. She glanced at me. Young man, I don't take lessons in ethics from assistants. Wolfe didn't bother to rebuke her. He doesn't defend me. He uses me. Who delivered the message? Wolfe asked. Encrypted email. Anonymous address. Same sort of cowardly theater you described. Yet you are not so foolish as to publish without corroboration. So you sought corroboration. Wolfe's voice was mild. From whom? She slid her leg over the other and leaned back. If you know everything, why ask? Because I enjoy hearing you confirm me. That annoyed her. She straightened slightly. I spoke with Victor Slane. Wolfe's eyelids lowered a fraction. You spoke with Mr. Slane, a lobbyist and consultant. Why him? Because he called me, she said, annoyed now. At midnight the night after the dinner. Said he had something to show me for the right moment. He knows. I'm interested in power games around food institutions. He also knows I don't move unless there's a real fire. A convenient arsonist, I murmured. She shot me a look. Don't be cute. The bell rang again. I went to the door. Saul Panzer brought in Victor Slane, Harold Quillen, and Marisol Kite in a neat little procession, like a maitre de seating a very expensive, very unhappy party. Slane came in smooth and smiling, hands in his coat pockets, a man who thinks every room is a negotiation waiting to happen. Quillen looked nervous, but trying to look important about it. You could tell his suit had more authority than his spine. Marisol Kite was in her late 50s, dressed in black with a single emerald pin on her lapel that looked like a tiny verdict. She moved with the leisurely certainty of someone used to being obeyed in rooms that smell of endowment money. She glanced at Leah Vance and gave her a brief smile of recognition that was too natural to be new. Oh, I thought. So that's the seam. Wolfe nodded to the chairs. Sit, all of you. They sat. The room was full in the way a courtroom gets full before the sentence. Wolfe looked at Slane first. Mr. Slane, you enlisted Julian Rourke to remove Miss Rourke's kit from the pantry office using his debts as leverage. You did so to create a window of access. You will not deny it, because he has already confessed, and the cameras show him using your key. Slane's smile didn't budge. You're an impressive man, Mr. Wolfe, but I'm afraid you misunderstand. Julian asked for help with his creditors. I told him I'd speak to someone. That's all. You gave him a key, Wolfe said. Slane opened his hands. A key he returned. It was a favor. A favor, Wolfe echoed. To whom? Slane's eyes slid to Dr. Fallow's empty chair as if hoping he could lean on it. To Celia. Her bag was left behind. I thought retrieving it was courteous. Courteousness, Wolfe said, is not among your professional virtues. You are a facilitator, Mr. Slane, not an altruist. Who asked you to facilitate? Slane's jaw tightened slightly. The smile remained, but it went brittle. No one asked. I act on my own initiative if I see a problem that needs solving. Wolfe nodded as if granting him a small mercy in advance. Then you will appreciate that I solve problems by naming them. Miss Kite. Marisol Kite lifted her brows. Yes, Mr. Wolfe. Your social committee member, Mrs. Bryce, called you 3 weeks ago when Celia Rourke expelled her son Noel for theft. You defended the boy. Miss Rourke refused. You were angry. Kite's expression didn't change. I was disappointed. Not angry. Discipline is necessary. Indeed, you are fond of necessity when it suits you. Wolfe's voice stayed calm, but the lines were tightening. You also desire the pharmaceutical partnership Dr. Fallows proposed. You desire it because Quillen will vote as donors instruct him, and because you will control the Institute once Miss Rourke resigns or is removed. Quillen jerked. That's not... Be silent, Mr. Quillen, Wolfe said, and Quillen obeyed with embarrassing speed. Kite exhaled once, almost amused. That's quite a story. Do you have evidence? Yes, Wolfe said. Let us assemble it. He lifted a thick envelope from his desk. First, the interval. Julian Rourke removed the kit at 10:47, deposited it in the lockers. During that interval, only a handful of people were unaccounted for in the kitchen corridor. You, Mr. Slane, and Miss Vance. Dr. Fallows remained with his guests. Mr. Shearer was loudly in the dining room. Mr. Quillen was at the bar. The hunt room staff were occupied. Kite watched him without blinking, a poker player annoyed by an amateur's confidence. Second, Wolfe continued, the target. The threat demanded Miss Rourke's resignation by Friday at noon, precisely the hour of your board's emergency session. You did not choose another time because you did not want her disgraced later. You wanted her absent for the vote. You needed her removed before she could persuade undecided members. He turned one slow degree toward Leah Vance. Third, the delivery. Miss Vance received the notebook page and the photograph from an anonymous source, but she was primed by Mr. Slane the night after the dinner. He called her because he had been instructed to prepare a public narrative. Who would benefit from that narrative? The person who needed a clean excuse to replace Miss Rourke. Leah Vance scoffed. You're drawing a line and hoping it fits. It fits because of the fourth point, Wolfe said. The notebook page was not merely a recipe. It contained a private line. If he insists on being there, I will give him something he cannot digest. That line is not about poisoning. It is about irritation, yet it was selected because it implies intent. Only someone who had read the surrounding pages knew that line existed. Only someone who had the notebook in hand inside that kitchen could choose it. Kite's mouth tightened a fraction. The first real movement. And finally, Wolfe said, your era of vanity. This afternoon, an empty cardamom jar arrived on my step with the note, for your inspection, Wolfe. Whoever sent it believed themselves clever enough to taunt me. Mr. Slane is not foolish enough to taunt a man he has not studied. Miss Vance is not foolish enough to taunt a man she intends to use. You are. Kite laughed softly. That is the most theatrical accusation I've heard in years. Yes, Wolfe said. You are also not clever enough to control your accessories across every stage. Saul Panzer retrieved the hunt room delivery log. The boy who dropped the jar here today collected it from a driver employed by Kite Foundation Services. Your non-profit's livery is discreet, but not invisible. Silence hit the rooms and stayed. Kite stared at Wolfe for a long beat. Then she took a breath that was too slow for innocence. Even if I wished Celia gone, she said carefully, you still have no proof I stole anything. Wolfe's eyes were flat. You did not steal. You appropriated. With Mr. Slane's assistance. With Miss Vance's appetite. The physical proof is irrelevant because you have already supplied the legal proof. Her brow furrowed. Meaning? Wolfe opened another sheet from the envelope and slid it across the desk. I invited you here under the pretense of discussion, he said. But Saul Panzer, at my request, visited your office this afternoon. He found a copy of this notebook page in your desk drawer, along with a draft press packet titled Institute Head Implicated in Poison Plot. You were preparing the story for Miss Vance's signature the moment Miss Rourke resigned. You may call this circumstance. Inspector Kramer will call it conspiracy. Kite didn't reach for the paper. Her hands stayed folded in her lap, but they were very white. Slane's head turned toward her, eyes widening slightly, the way a hired man looks when he realizes the employer has let him stand too close to a blast. Quillen looked like he might faint. Leah Vance's lips parted in a slow, surprised smile. Marisol, you didn't tell me you were writing the packet. Kite's gaze snapped to Vance. You were being paid for an exclusive. Don't confuse that with partnership. Ah, Vance said. So I was a utensil. You all were, Wolfe said not unkindly. Mr. Slane served as lever. Miss Vance served as trumpet. Mr. Rourke served as door opener. The motive was Miss Kite's desire for control and profit under the mask of philanthropy. Kite straightened, a queen deciding whether to topple gracefully. You think you've won because you cornered me in a parlor. I built this institute's scholarship wing. I kept it afloat. Celia is brilliant, but she is stubborn. The partnership would have doubled our reach. She refused, so I created a path around her refusal. A path through her ruin, Wolfe said. Kite lifted a shoulder. Reputations fall in service of bigger goods. Wolfe looked at her as if she were a dish he'd tasted once and never wanted again. You mistake appetite for ethics. The bell rang softly. Fritz at the door, admitting Inspector Kramer, who had been waiting on Wolfe's signal. Saul followed behind him. Kramer took in the scene, the faces, the posture of guilt hanging in the air like smoke. "All right," he said. "What have we got?" Wolfe spoke without hurry. Conspiracy to coerce the resignation of Celia Rourke through fabricated implication of poisoning, theft of personal property, attempted obstruction of board governance, and the use of a journalist to launder a false accusation. Miss Kite is the principal. Mr. Slane is accessory. Miss Vance is witness or accomplice, depending on her candor. Kramer grunted. "Kite, Slane, stand up." Kite rose smoothly. Slane rose less smoothly. Leah Vance half rose and then stopped. "Inspector, I was misled." Kramer gave her a look that could curdle cream. "You can tell me all about it downtown." As they were being guided out, Kite paused at the doorway and looked back at Wolfe. "You think Celia will thank you," she said. "She will not need to," Wolfe replied. "Integrity is not a transaction." Kite left without another word. The door closed. The office exhaled. I looked at Wolfe. Well, that was neat. Like a souffle that actually rises. It was not neat, Wolfe said. It was sordid. And it required that a woman's work be held hostage by another woman's ambition. I find that distasteful. "Yeah," I said. "You hate distasteful things. Except oysters." He ignored me. "Where is Miss Rourke?" "Front room," I said. "Fritz has her. Bring her." I went out. Celia was standing by the window, hands clasped behind her back, staring at the street like it owed her an explanation. When I told her it was done, her shoulders sagged one deep breath. Not relief exactly. More like she'd stopped bracing for impact. She came into the office. Wolfe told her the facts in his clean, surgical way, omitting nothing and decorating nothing. When he finished, she shut her eyes for a moment. "Marisol," she said softly. "All this time, power is a spice," Wolfe said. "Some people cannot resist using too much." She looked at him, and for a second her composure cracked into something like grief. Then she straightened. "Thank you," she said. "I did not do it for gratitude," Wolfe replied. "I did it because your brownstone disturbance was intolerable." A tiny smile touched her mouth. She understood him. "The board meets Friday. I'll be there." "Yes," he studied her. "And your brother?" She flinched. "I don't know." "Knowing is helpful," Wolfe said, "but deciding is yours." She nodded once. "It will be." She left. When she was gone, the house got its silence back the way a violin gets its case. Fritz appeared to clear the coffee tray, and Wolfe's eyes drifted toward the dining room with renewed interest. At last he said, "Archie, there is a lesson in this." "Only one." He gave me the look you give a child who has asked whether water is wet. In the kitchen, as in life, the impulse to control often masquerades as the desire to improve, and those who season ambition with righteousness are the most dangerous cooks. I grinned. "So what you're saying is, don't let donors near the stove." "I am saying," Wolfe corrected, "that ethics is not an ingredient to add after tasting. It must be in the stock from the beginning." Fritz announced dinner. The smell was gorgeous and honest, the kind that makes a man believe the world can still be put right with enough butter and patience. Wolfe rose, slowly, with dignity, because even he knows when to move for the purposes of appetite. As we went to the table, I thought about a notebook page, a spice jar, and a woman who had nearly lost her life's work to someone who called it a bigger good. New York would keep cooking up schemes. People would keep confusing hunger with right. But for tonight, the brownstone was quiet again, and Nero Wolfe was ready to eat.